Chapter 87, 100. The phone rang for the umpteenth time. This time I didn't answer. I was too busy staring at the TV screen. I was staring at my comrade, face plastered on every channel as the shooter. 25-year-old Benny Lee Lawson, a member of the 100 block of 1st Street, the 1st and Kennedy Street crew.
Benny Lawson walked into D.C. Police Headquarters just after 3 p.m. with a purpose. Law enforcement sources say when Lawson got onto the 3rd floor and into the area of the cold case squad, he took off his hat, said something to the effect, "Anybody got a problem with this?" pulled the Tech 9 out and opened fire. The gun apparently had a 30-round clip.
I looked at my beeper hoping to see another message from Benny, but the 100 message was forever frozen in time. 11/22/94, 12:30 p.m. Bundy looked at his beeper and then cut it off. No one showed any reaction as the emotional news reporter wiped tears from her pink cheeks. No one flinched as her colleagues embraced her as she bawled like a child. "Looked like she's taking it personal," someone uttered. I jumped up and spoke. "Hey, we gotta clean up. They heading straight here." Everybody got up and started cleaning up. A few other guys quickly left to go and scour their own homes. Phone calls were being made instructing everyone to scrub and remove everything of value, from contraband to passports to jewelry to pictures. I knew America's history. If a black man killed a cop, all his friends, family, and everyone he ever associated with will be harassed, arrested, and may even be beaten and killed. But if a white man killed a cop, he's considered a lone wolf with mental health issues. So I prepared. I knew that the gang in blue were going to be out for revenge and were going to do what's natural: look for someone to blame. They also needed an explanation to make it make sense to themselves. Arrogant people never believe that they're punished for their arrogance and disrespect. They look for something more rational, like peer pressure, or maybe he was so scared to go back to prison that he went into a building filled with fully armed men and opened fire. Or maybe someone forced him, a grown man, to take his own life. Or maybe he was trying to prove something. Whatever they could come up with that made sense to them, they would push the fabricated story to their propaganda arm, the media, who would then repeat it over and over and over by spreading it in their newspapers, TV shows, and magazines. Citizens would then repeat what they heard over and over and over, therefore creating what was called the echo chamber. The echo chamber was one of the most powerful tools the government had in getting most people to believe anything that they were told, even if it was a blatant lie. Only one person knew what really happened and why, and he was dead. Everything else was speculation. Lee's Law.
Lee's Law.
Lee's Law.
Lee's Law. Lee's Law. Lee's Law.
Chapter 88, Cop Stalker. Benny inspired young men from all over the country to stand up to their enemies. They only demanded to be respected as a man, which seemed to be a foreign concept to a lot of the gung-ho ex-military pigs. 6 weeks after Benny died, we were eating at a Wendy's restaurant less than 2 miles from our neighborhood. As we exited the parking lot, we heard gunshots. They sounded like firecrackers, but we all took cover, guns in hand and ready to return fire. The shots were coming from the opposite side of the building, so we got into our cars and left. The news beat us back to Kennedy Street that a cop was just shot. He was sitting in the Wendy's when a man walked up and dumped 5 bullets into him. No one knew why. Maybe that cop disrespected that man. Witnesses described a tall man with braces on his teeth. But for some reason, we were the first suspects and we were being harassed about it, though we're far from tall and never wore braces. The shooter drove a white bucket, and we also owned a white bucket. A week later, another cop was shot on 16th Street. Broad daylight. After the attack, the shooter carjacked a taxi cab, crashed it, jumped out and escaped through the subway system. The gun from that shooting matched the gun from the Wendy's shooting. The so-called cop stalker was a homie named Ralph Mclean. Benny was his inspiration. He was also dishonored and disrespected by the police on multiple occasions, which may have caused him to declare war on them. The fabricated media-fueled story of Benny being raped in prison and being a snitch probably set Ralph off also. The intention of the propaganda backfired. He knew of Benny and Benny's reputation and may have been incensed by the false propaganda. Ralph acquired a Mac 11 just like Benny's and continued his attacks. A one-man wrecking crew. Cops weren't allowed to drive by themselves anymore. It had to be 2 or 3 in each car. The cops from inside the community still rode by themselves. They weren't scared. But the cops from outside of the community rode deep. They shivered like muscle spasms. The stalkers were being stalked again. I knew that after these situations, my days in society were numbered. Everyone affiliated with Lee's or Ralph, days were numbered. I knew the government didn't have a category of lone wolf for black people. That was only reserved for Europeans. Me and everyone they had ever befriended would be considered affiliates. Even their family members would be targeted. So a few weeks after Benny's demonstration, I took my brother to JFK Airport in Queens, New York, for him to board the Aeroflot. We knew even if the FBI thought we may leave the country, the Aeroflot to Moscow, Russia would be the last place they thought of. They more than likely would focus on the Caribbean. All the stereotypical thoughts of Russians seemed to be true with the few men standing ahead of us. Stone-faced, solidly built, fur hats and square jaws. We acted normal walking through the airport while looking for any abnormal person peeking over a newspaper or talking into a radio. As my brother went to check in, we shook hands and hugged. I had on Benny's blue Eddie Bauer coat, so the hug also held Benny between us. He looked into my eyes, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the sea of Russians, never looking back. This was heartbreaking, because this wasn't an ordinary trip. He was leaving us for good. He was never coming back. More than not, I knew that I would never see him again for the rest of my life. It was a reality I had to grapple with as I saw quick glimpses of his small structure between the large Hulk and Russians. It was like seeing a loved one dying and can't do nothing about it. He was gone. He was going to a better place and I couldn't go. He was leaving this world behind, but I had to stay back to be the scapegoat. With him gone, they would take their blame out on me. But with neither of us here to place the blame on, they may take it out on other people close to us. I didn't mind being a fall guy because I knew they didn't have anything substantial on me, considering that I had only been in society for 7 months and was gone for close to 6 years. I got back onto the I-95 South, sad, as if I had just left my brother's wake. We all rode in silence for the 4-hour trip. I returned to Washington to pick up the temperature in the streets and in turn picked up the scent of the Alphabet Boys. I could spot the unmarked Ford Crown Victorias from anywhere, so after a 15-minute chase through Prince George's County, I immediately headed for North Carolina and then to South Carolina, where I owned a triple-wide trailer. I continued moving product up and down the East Coast while laying low. I also stayed in a different hotel every 2 or 3 days to stay one step ahead of the feds. I knew my days were numbered. I was just trying to make the last days count. Everyone that I dealt with was well aware of this also. The 100, First and Kennedy Street crew. Benny Lee Lawson and Ralph Mclean's faces had been on nationwide news repeatedly every day for the past 3 months. They all knew I didn't have much time left, but they wished me well by helping me to move product faster and giving me cheaper wholesale prices.